Once upon a time, in a quiet town tucked between hills and misty forests, there lived a woman named Clara. She was in her early 30s, worked at a small antique bookshop, and spent most of her evenings sipping tea while listening to old jazz records her father once loved. Her life was calm, uneventful, wrapped in the kind of peaceful routine that felt safe, almost too safe. Her father, Gregory, had passed away when she was just a teenager, leaving behind a box of handwritten letters, a pocket watch with their initials carved inside, and a silence in the house that never really left. Clara had never married. Some said she was too particular, others said she was too lost in the past. But the truth was, Clara still held onto the memory of her father like it was a thread tying her to the world. He had been kind, a bit old-fashioned, and had a voice like warm thunder. She missed him more as the years passed, not less. One rainy Tuesday, Clara was walking through the local park on her way to the market, her umbrella barely shielding her from the wind. As she passed by the old stone fountain at the park's center, her eyes caught something or someone, small and out. Tove Place, a boy, he couldn't have been more than 10. His clothes were worn thin, his shoes looked like they'd been through a dozen winters, and his hair clung wet to his forehead. But it wasn't his condition that stopped Clara in her tracks. It was his face. She dropped her umbrella. The boy had her father's eyes. The same deep-set, storm-grey eyes, the same serious, curious look, even the curve of his mouth, the slight crookedness of his nose, exactly like Gregory. It was like looking at a photograph from her childhood, only somehow brought to life. She stood frozen, heart pounding. The boy noticed her and looked away, almost embarrassed. He didn't run. He just sat on the edge of the fountain, staring down at his reflection in the rippling water. Clara, breath caught in her throat, walked up slowly. "Hey, are you all right?" she asked, trying to sound gentle, not shaken. The boy nodded, but didn't speak. "Are you lost? Do you have someone I can call?" Still nothing. Then finally he looked up again and the words fell from Clara's lips without her meaning to say them. "You look like someone I used to know." The boy tilted his head. "People tell me I look like someone a lot. I don't know who, though." Her knees almost gave out. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Eli." "Where are your parents, Eli?" He shrugged. "Don't have any. I was in foster homes, but I left. I don't like them." Clara's mind spun. 1,000 questions rushed in, all jumbled, but one question screamed louder than the others. How could a boy who looked like her dead father be here now? And then something even more chilling. As the wind picked up, Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out a small old watch. Her father's pocket watch. Clara stepped back. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "I found it. In a box. It had a letter in it too. But I can't read cursive. Can you?" Clara reached for the watch, trembling. On the back, the initials GC and CC were still engraved, Gregory Charles and Clara Christine. Her vision blurred. "Where's the letter?" she asked, barely managing to keep her voice steady. Eli opened a folded piece of yellowed paper from his coat. She took it with shaking hands, unfolded it, and began to read. And what she read next would unravel everything she thought she knew about her father, and about herself. Clara's fingers trembled as she held the letter. The paper was fragile, edges browned with age, and the ink had started to fade. It was written in the same looping cursive her father used to write her birthday cards in, a style so familiar it made her heart ache. The letter began, "To the one who finds this, know that what you hold is not just a message, but a truth buried by fear, and a love hidden by shame." Clara's eyes darted through the words, her breath catching with each line. The letter spoke of a time before she was born, of a woman her father had loved, deeply, painfully, but never married. Her name was Eleanor. She had been young, barely 19, and their relationship had been a secret, forbidden by both families for reasons the letter didn't explain fully. But Elena had gotten pregnant. And Gregory, her father, had walked away. Not because he didn't care, but because, as the letter painfully admitted, "I was a coward. I feared losing what I had. I feared being disowned. I feared raising a child in a world that would hate us for the way we came together. Clara felt the ground beneath her shift. Her father had another child? A son? Eli. She stared at the boy again. He had been watching her, quiet, unreadable. He didn't ask what the letter said. Maybe he didn't want to know. Or maybe he already knew enough from years of wondering and never getting answers. Her mouth was dry. Do you know your mother's name? Eli looked down. They told me it was Elena, but I never met her. Clara gasped softly, a mix of shock and something like sorrow bubbling inside her. This wasn't just some strange coincidence. This was blood. This boy wasn't just a random orphan, he was her half-brother. How long have you had this letter? She asked. Couple weeks, Eli said. I found it in an old box at the shelter. They said someone dropped it off. No one knew who. Her mind raced. Who would leave a letter and a watch for a boy? To find unless they wanted him to know something. Unless someone knew he was more than just a forgotten child in the system. Did you ever meet anyone older, maybe in their 50s or 60s, who used to visit you? Clara asked, desperate now. Eli blinked. Yeah, a man. He came by a lot when I was little. He never said much, just left books, stories, watches too, like broken ones. Said they were full of time. Her heart stopped. Her father used to fix watches, said they were machines with memories. He'd always had a thing for giving stories to things others threw away. She pressed her hand to her chest. Was it possible? Had her father known? Had he tried to stay close, in the only way he could? Clara didn't realize she was crying until Eli looked at her with concern. Are you okay? He asked, his voice small. She knelt beside him, eyes red, heart torn open. I think you're my brother, she whispered. He didn't say anything, didn't react, just looked at her. For a moment she thought maybe he didn't believe it. Then quietly he said, I always hoped I had someone out there, someone who didn't forget me. Clara pulled him into a hug. He didn't resist. And as the rain began to fall again, gently this time, it felt less like a storm and more like the sky washing away years of silence. But this was only the beginning, because if her father had kept this secret, what else had he hidden? And more importantly, why now? That night Clara couldn't sleep. Clara couldn't. Eli was curled up on her old couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, breathing softly. She had insisted he come home with her, at least until they figured things out. It felt strange. This boy who looked like her father, now sleeping just a few feet away. The past was no longer just memory. It had become flesh and blood, breathing in her living room. Clara sat at the kitchen table, the letter unfolded again in front of her. Her fingers traced the handwriting, like she might uncover something. She missed. The words haunted her, a love hidden by shame and the deeper truth it hinted at. Her father hadn't just made a mistake. He had lived with that secret for decades, and for what? Reputation? Fear? Her mother had never spoken of Elena, never even hinted at anything. But Clara remembered now, something odd. How her father would go quiet on some nights, staring at the fireplace like it was speaking to him. How he'd disappear for hours without a word. And how he once told her when she was 16, sometimes we carry two lives inside us. One we live, and one we left behind. At the time, she thought it was about work. Now she knew better. The next morning, Clara made pancakes, Eli's request. He devoured them like he hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Between bites, he asked about Gregory, about what he was like. Clara tried to answer honestly. He was warm, but complicated. He loved old books and quiet mornings. He hated loud TVs and small talk. He'd fix anything with gears and wires but couldn't sew a button. And he loved me, deeply. I know he did. Eli nodded, chewing slowly. Sounds like a nice man. He was, Clara said, but he was also human. That afternoon, Clara did something she hadn't done in years. She went up to the attic. Dust clung to every box, but she remembered where she'd stored everything after Gregory passed. She opened the old trunk that once sat at the foot of his bed. Inside were photos, journals, postcards, and notebooks, all carefully bundled with twine like tiny time capsules. She took them down one by one. It wasn't long before she found what she wasn't sure she wanted to see: an envelope, unmarked, thick and sealed. Inside were photographs. One in particular stole the breath from her lungs. A young woman, dark hair, standing beside Gregory, smiling, shy, intimate, like they belonged to each other. On the back, in Gregory's writing, Elena, Spring '92, the day I failed her. She stared at that line over and over. The day I failed her. There were more pictures. One of Elena with a small infant. One of just the baby, swaddled in a blue blanket. The baby had Gregory's eyes. A note tucked behind the pictures was dated 1993. I wasn't there when he was born. I wasn't there when she cried, but I've watched, from a distance. Forgiveness is too much to ask. But maybe someday he'll know I never stopped thinking of him. Clara felt her chest tighten. It was almost too much. She went back downstairs, where Eli was flipping through an old photo album she had left on the table. "Hey," she said, softly. "I found something." He looked up. She sat beside him, placed the photograph of Elena in his hand. "That's your mom," she whispered. Eli looked at the picture for a long time. Then he smiled, just a little, just enough to show the ache behind his eyes. "She's pretty." "She is," Clara said. They sat in silence for a while. Then Eli asked, "Do you think, if he were alive, would he have wanted me?" Clara didn't answer right away. Instead, she took his hand and placed it over his chest. "He's in there," she said. "Same eyes, same stubborn look, same heart. He wanted you, he just didn't know how to show it." But even as she said it, she felt a strange stirring inside, a question she hadn't dared ask yet. If Gregory tried to stay close to Eli, who helped him? Who knew about this secret child and helped keep him hidden? And why did it feel like someone was still pulling the strings, even now? A week passed. Eli had settled into Clara's apartment as if it were always meant to be his home. He'd taken over the small guest room, really just a storage space Clara had barely used in years, but she fixed it up with warm sheets, a desk, and books from the shop. He spent hours flipping through her father's old repair manuals, trying to piece together how watches worked, just like Gregory used to. But even with the quiet, even with the growing bond between them, Clara couldn't shake a gnawing feeling, like they were being watched. Not in a paranoid way, but in that subtle creeping way where too many small things start to go wrong at once. It began with a phone call, blocked number, a raspy voice, low and unfamiliar. "Stop digging." Then silence. Clara froze, the phone still pressed to her ear long after the call ended. Her stomach dropped. No name, no threat, just those two words. It didn't feel like a prank. It felt like someone knew what she was uncovering, and they didn't want her to continue. She didn't tell Eli. Instead, she doubled down. At the town records office, Clara requested archived hospital records from the early 90s. She gave Elena's name. The clerk, an elderly woman with tired eyes, seemed nervous when she handed Clara the birth registry. "Elena Gray," Clara read aloud. "May 12th, 1993. Male child. No father listed." Typical, she thought. Expected. But the note scribbled. In the margin caught her attention. "File sealed by private legal counsel. See reference code GC93PS. GC, Gregory Charles." Why would her father have sealed a birth file? And with a private lawyer? He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, but he must have had something to protect. Or someone. She copied the code, thanked the clerk, and headed to the public library next. Old legal records weren't digitized. It took hours to sift through microfilm, but finally she found it. An appointment log from a local law office. Her father's name, dated June 1st, 1993, 1 week after Eli's birth. Purpose of visit, asset protection, private guardianship clause. Clara leaned back in the stiff wooden chair, heart racing. It was right there. Her father had made legal arrangements regarding a child, Eli, and kept it hidden from everyone. It wasn't just shame or fear. It was intentional, planned. But for what? Back at home, Clara went through her father's journals again. Near the back of one she hadn't opened fully, she found a small leather envelope stitched to the inside cover. Inside was a business card. Cliff Warren, attorney at law. The card was old, edges yellowed, but the name stirred something. She'd heard it before, long ago, maybe in the background of one of her parents' arguments, maybe whispered when they thought. She wasn't listening. She Googled the name. Cliff Warren was still alive and still practicing, though semi-retired. His office was in a nearby city. Clara called immediately. When she gave her father's name, there was a long pause. Then the receptionist's voice lowered. Mr. Warren. Doesn't usually take walk-ins, but he said if Gregory Charles's daughter ever called, to send her straight in. Chills, full-body chills. The next morning, Clara left Eli with a trusted friend who ran the bookstore. She promised him she'd only be gone a few hours. He didn't ask questions. He never did. But his eyes followed her to the door with a look that said he knew this. Wasn't just a routine trip. Clara drove 2 hours in silence. Mr. Warren's office was tucked between 2 abandoned buildings, like it hadn't been updated in 20 years. The nameplate on the frosted glass read, Cliff Warren, discreet counsel since 1981. The receptionist ushered her in. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old wood and dust. Mr. Warren was in his 70s, with silver hair and a face carved by years of secrets. He didn't smile when she walked in, just studied her. You have your father's eyes, he said, voice gravelly. You knew him well? Well enough to know he died with a secret he shouldn't have carried alone. Clara sat down slowly. I think I found that secret, she said. His son. Warren nodded. That's only half the story. Clara blinked. What's the other half? Warren leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. Elena didn't die in childbirth. She disappeared. Clara stared at him. What? She vanished. Left the child at a shelter, no ID, no goodbye, but someone, your father or someone close to him, was keeping track. That's why the file was sealed. Clara's mouth was dry. Do you know where she went? Warren exhaled slowly. No, but someone out there does, and they've been watching Eli for a long time. She remembered the phone call. The voice. Who? She asked. Warren looked her dead in the eye. Whoever helped make sure Eli never found out who he really was. Clara drove home in silence, the city lights flickering through her windshield like ghosts, whispering things she didn't want to hear. Her grip on the steering wheel was tight, her knuckles pale. Cliff Warren's words echoed again and again in her head. Elena disappeared. And more chilling. Someone's been watching Eli for a long time. She didn't know what. She'd expected. Closure, a name, maybe even a paper trail that led to a missing mother. But what she got instead was a doorway into something deeper, something darker. Someone had gone through great lengths to erase Elena, to keep the truth buried. And if Eli had always been watched, what did that mean for the boy now asleep in her home? She pulled into her driveway just past 9 p.m. The house was dark. That was strange. She'd told Mrs. Hargrove, the bookshop owner, to keep the hallway light on for Eli. Clara stepped out of the car, heart thudding louder than her footsteps. She tried the front door, unlocked. Her pulse spiked. She pushed it open slowly. The creak sounded like a scream in the silence. Eli? She called out, trying to keep her voice calm. No answer. It's me, Clara. She stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dark. The air felt wrong, heavy, like something unseen had just left, or worse, was still there. Eli. Then she heard it, bare feet hitting the wooden floor above. A shuffle, fast. She ran up the stairs, 2 steps at a time, and threw open the guest room door. Eli sat on the edge of the bed, wide-eyed, blanket wrapped around his body like a shield. I heard someone downstairs, he said before she could speak. They were in the kitchen. Clara's stomach turned. Did you see them? He shook his head. I stayed quiet just like I did in the homes. When someone comes in and you don't know if they're nice, you stay still. Clara rushed to him, kneeling, grabbing his hands. You did the right thing. I'm here now. She checked the house. Nothing broken, nothing stolen. But in the kitchen, the back door was cracked open. just a sliver, enough for someone to leave. On the counter was a folded note, no envelope. Just one word scribbled in thick black ink. Stop. That was it. No name, no threat, just a command. Clara sat in the kitchen, the note in her hand, her mind reeling. Someone had been in her home, with Eli, watching him, leaving messages. That wasn't just intimidation anymore, that was a warning. She couldn't stay here, not without answers. The next morning she told Eli they were going on a trip. He didn't question her, just packed his few things and followed her to the car. She drove them to the edge of town, to a motel she used, to pass on the way to college. It was quiet, run down, but still standing. The owner didn't ask questions, just handed her a key to room 12 and nodded. They stayed there for 2 days. Clara barely slept. She made calls, searched records, contacted people she hadn't spoken to in years. Nobody remembered Elena. No one even remembered her name. It was like she'd been wiped clean from every page of the town's history. On the 3rd day, a letter arrived at the motel. No return address. The envelope was made of thick cream paper, like something sent from a lawyer's office. Inside was a photograph. It was old, grainy, black and white. Elena, younger, maybe 17, standing beside. A man in a military uniform. Clara didn't recognize him. But scribbled on the back of the photo were 5 words that made her blood run cold. He's not your father's son. Clara stared at the photo for what felt like an hour. He's not your father's son. The words scratched at her. Thoughts, breaking everything she believed just days ago. Her mind raced. Was this a lie, a warning, a manipulation? Eli had her father's eyes, the same solemn silence, the same way of carrying pain without speaking it. And yet, the watch, the letter, the sealed file, all of it pointed to Gregory being involved. But this photo, it introduced someone new, someone unknown. The man standing next to Eleanor was tall, broad-shouldered, with a jaw like cut stone. He wore an army uniform, one hand draped protectively around Elena's waist. He looked older than her by years, maybe even a decade. But Elena didn't seem scared. She looked proud, defiant even. Clara flipped the photo over again. No date, no other. Writing, just that single awful sentence. She showed it to Eli. He held it with both hands like it was glass. "Do you know him?" she asked. Eli shook his head. "No, but I think I've seen him before." Clara's heart jumped. "Where?" He thought for a moment, chewing his bottom lip, like he always did when he was nervous. "A man came to one of the shelters, a long time ago, maybe when I was 6 or 7. He had a photo, too. He looked at me weird, asked if my mom ever talked about the army. I didn't know what he meant. He left before anyone else saw him." Clara leaned forward. "Did he say his name?" "No, just something about needing to know the truth before it was too late." She felt cold all over. Who was this man? She dug back into her father's journals, searching for anything, any mention of military or Elena being involved with someone else. But nothing. It was like Gregory either didn't know or had refused to write it down, maybe out of denial. Maybe guilt, or maybe, just maybe, because the truth was too complicated even for him. Then Clara remembered something. In the photo albums from the attic, there had been a picture, one she hadn't paid much attention to. A group photo, her father standing beside 2 men in uniform. One of them was Cliff Warren back in his younger days. The other was this man. Clara dug through the box and found it. Yes, there he was. She took it straight to Cliff Warren. He stared at it for a long time, then finally sighed. "His name's Marcus Hale, retired major. Served with Gregory overseas. They were close, very close at one point. But something happened. A falling out. Bad blood." Clara nodded slowly. "Was it over, Elena?" Warren looked away. "Don't ask about ghosts," he said softly. "But if that letter is true, then Marcus might be Eli's biological father, not Gregory." The room felt too small. Clara left without saying much more, her thoughts tangled and frayed. If Marcus was Eli's father, did Gregory know? Was that why he stayed away from Elena in the end? Not because of fear, but because the child wasn't his. She didn't know how to tell Eli. How do you tell a boy who finally thinks he belongs that maybe he doesn't? But fate didn't wait for her to figure it out. That night, someone broke into their motel room. Clara had taken Eli out for dinner, and when they returned, the door was slightly ajar. Inside, drawers were open, bags overturned, but nothing taken, at least not obviously. Then Clara noticed the photo was gone. The one of Marcus and Elena, only the photo. Whoever had come wasn't looking to steal. They were looking to erase. And then, for the second time, a note was left behind. This one wasn't written in thick ink. It was typed, plain, cold, final. Stop digging or the boy disappears. Clara locked the motel door and shoved a chair under the handle, even though she knew if someone really wanted to get in, it wouldn't stop them. Her hands were shaking as she reread the note for the 10th time. Stop digging, or the boy disappears. Eli sat on the edge of the bed, his knees pulled to his chest. He didn't say much, but his eyes, those haunting storm-grey eyes, watched her every move. She hated that he had to see her like this, afraid, uncertain. But there was no way to hide it anymore. Whoever they were dealing with, they weren't just trying to scare her. They were trying to silence her. "I need you to be honest with me," she said quietly, kneeling beside him. "Did anyone ever tell you who your father was?" Eli looked down. "No. They said my mum died when I was a baby, and no one ever claimed me." Clara nodded, biting her tongue to hold back the 1,000 things she wanted to say about Marcus, about Gregory, about the lie wrapped around his very existence, but there was no time. They needed to move. She packed their bags in silence and checked out of the motel just after midnight. She didn't use her credit card, didn't leave her name. She took back roads, changed directions 3 times, and finally ended up in a small wooded cabin owned by an old friend of Gregory's. A man named Tom, a war buddy, now a recluse who lived off the grid and owed Gregory more than one life debt. Tom didn't ask questions, just handed her the keys and nodded. "You've got 3 days," he said. "After that, I got to disappear again." That was fine. Clara didn't need long. She stayed up all night going through her father's journals again, this time searching for any mention of Marcus. She almost missed it. A small entry scribbled in the corner of a page filled with watch repair notes. "MH came again today. Says the boy looks like me. I see him in the eyes, but not the soul." Elena lied. Or maybe she didn't know. But she's scared, and if the wrong people find out, they'll take the boy, not for love, for leverage. Clara's throat went dry. Leverage. That word stuck. Was this about more than guilt or identity? Was Eli valuable to someone? To them? She thought of the sealed file, of Cliff Warren, of the sudden disappearance of Elena, of the man in the photo, the military tie-ins, the note, the intrusions. It wasn't just a family secret, it was a cover-up. Her phone vibrated. No number. She answered. A pause, then a voice. Same one as before. "You should have stopped." Clara's breath caught. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows what happens to kids like him when people like you don't listen. I swear if you come near him again, I don't have to. You're doing the work for me. Keep digging, Clara, keep running. You'll lead us right to the boy's real father." Click. She dropped the phone, panic rising like bile in her throat. This wasn't about the past anymore. It was a hunt, and Clara was the bait. The next morning, Tom knocked once before coming in. "You need to see something," he said. He turned on an old radio, shortwave, scrambled frequencies. A news bulletin cut through the static. Unnamed military contractor believed to be connected to a classified project in the 1990s has surfaced again in a small New York county. Sources say the man, last known by the name Marcus Hale, may have links to a Black Ops program that vanished after internal investigations. Clara stared at the radio. Black Ops, classified. Eli wasn't just some forgotten child. He was tied to something the government wanted erased. And now she knew too much. She turned to Tom, her voice low. "I need to find Marcus Hale." Tom looked at her grim. "No, Clara, you don't find Marcus Hale, you survive him." Rain beat against the cabin windows like desperate fists. Trees swayed like giants in mourning. Thunder cracked overhead. But inside the cabin it was silent. Too silent. Clara had barely slept. She sat at the table with a map spread before her, markers dotting everywhere Marcus Hale had ever surfaced. The news bulletin had triggered something. An old memory, her father's voice. If you ever need to find someone the world wants hidden, you go where the noise stops, where no one listens because they're too afraid to ask. She traced the path on the map with her finger. There was one place, just one, that fit the bill. Fort Delham. An old decommissioned military base 3 counties over. Rumors swirled around it for years. Tests, experiments, people who never made it out. Clara had always thought those were just campfire stories. Until now. Tom gave her his truck, a heavy old beast that looked like it could take a bullet or 10. Don't trust anyone wearing a badge or a uniform, he warned. And keep the kid out of sight. She nodded. Eli sat beside her, backpack in his lap. He hadn't said much in the last day, but his eyes had changed. Sharper. Not scared anymore. Determined. As they approached the ruins of Fort Delham, Clara's stomach twisted. The buildings were crumbling. Rusted gates swung open in the wind. The place looked abandoned, but her gut told her it wasn't. She parked the truck under a line of trees and led Eli through the perimeter fence. They kept low, moving through. Brush and concrete like shadows. It didn't take long to find signs of life. A light in one of the underground bunker entrances, voices, and then gunfire. Not at them, not yet. Inside the bunker, Clara found a narrow stairwell leading into darkness. At the bottom, there was a room, lit only by a flickering lamp. And there he was, Marcus Hale. Older now, grey around the temples, scar over one eye, but unmistakable. He stood calmly as if he'd been expecting her. You came, he said. Clara stepped forward, shielding Eli. What do you want from him? Marcus raised a hand. I don't want to hurt the boy. I never did. Then why the threats, why the warnings, why the people in my house? Because you're not the only one looking for answers, he said coldly. There are others, men I used to work for. They want Eli, not for who he is, but for what he was born into. Clara frowned. Born into what? Marcus turned and pointed to a file on the table, thick, stamped, classified. She opened it. Inside were documents, DNA tests, project reports, photos, medical records. The words genetic candidate series. Echo protocol burned into her brain. Eli was part of something else, something not natural. Elena had been part of a covert military genetics program, selected without consent. They'd experimented with matching genes, soldier stock, genius-level IQ, behavioral modifications. Marcus had been one of the test subjects. The donor, the soldier, and Elena, she never had a choice. She ran when she found out what they were doing, Marcus said quietly. And when she had Eli, she vanished, tried to keep him away from it all. Clara felt sick. So, Gregory wasn't his father. No, Marcus said, but he knew, and he protected Eli anyway. Took the blame, hid the files, paid off people. He kept the boy safe. Until he died. Marcus nodded. And now they know Eli's alive. Clara looked at the boy. What do they want with him now? His blood, Marcus said. His brain. He was the only success, and if they get him, they'll start the project again. Then we stop them, she said. You won't make it out of here alive, Marcus warned. They've already surrounded the base. Outside, headlights cut through the rain. Dozens of them. Clara grabbed Eli's hand. Then we fight our way out. But Marcus shook his head. You'll never outrun them. He reached into the desk and pulled out a vial. But you can end it. What is that? She asked. The cure. To erase what they made him into. He'll be just a boy. No enhancements. No reason for them to chase him anymore. Clara looked at Eli. He nodded. He was ready. She injected the serum into his arm. He winced, but didn't cry. Marcus turned to her, eyes heavy. Now go through the back tunnel, take the evidence, burn the rest. Clara hesitated. What about you? I'll hold them off. A moment passed between them. No forgiveness, no apologies. Just understanding. Clara and Eli ran. Through the tunnels, through the storm, through fire and gunshots echoing. Behind them, they didn't look back. By dawn they were gone, the base was ashes, and Eli, he was just a boy now. No secrets in his blood, no monsters in his past, just a sister by his side, and a story the world would never know. But Clara would remember. She always would.